America. Thank you for inviting me here. There are a few things that former officials have to do at the beginning of speeches that they make in public. One of them is a disclaimer. People who have been in my position in the past where you have to make public speeches as an official always learn, don't say anything memorable. After you leave those positions, some of them would rather you don't say anything at all, but you have to basically stand up and say, what I'm about to tell you is my own opinion, it's of no importance whatsoever, and if you want to do something else while I'm speaking, feel free to do so. And to my friends from the press who are here, if I do happen to say something memorable, it's completely by accident, don't take it down, we'll talk about it later. Actually, since I retired from government service, I really do not have any special access or insights. But I do follow the situation carefully. I'm currently working on a book about the PRC politics, so I'm trying to keep up with events in the region. And obviously, my service in the National Security Council during the 1990s did provide me with a number of interesting insights about Taiwan-PRC-U.S. relations. In my discussion last week with Garrett and Dr. Ding about this speech in which I was asked to sort of present the regional, or at least a PRC perspective, I sort of casually and lightheartedly referred to the People's Republic of China as the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Now, many of you may not know that particular metaphor. The 800-pound gorilla is a U.S. metaphor, which stands for something or someone that is a dominant influence, so large and so strong that its interests have to be taken into a consideration, able to get its way through brute strength. The origin of the term is actually a joke that originated sometime in the early 1970s, which goes about like this. Question: where does an 800-pound gorilla sleep? Answer: wherever it wants to. Now, that's not a particularly funny joke, and it's not really a particularly apt description of a gorilla because they don't get to 800 pounds. They sort of top out around 500, but the image is apt, and it's one that is often used, often misused. Is that metaphor accurate in the case of Taiwan-U.S. PRC relations? Is the PRC now the dominant power in the region, able to do whatever it wants without worrying about opposition from other countries or forces? Well, the answer to that question is, as you might expect, mixed. On the one hand, the PRC's economic growth over the past 2 decades, especially since Deng Xiaoping's Nanxun, has been phenomenal. Now, I won't try to overwhelm you with numbers, which can be misleading and even inaccurate on occasions, but the facts are fairly apparent for everyone to see. The PRC has experienced double-digit growth in its gross domestic product for the last 20 years and is now considered by some to be the second largest economy in the world. Taiwan has seen this growth at close range, participated in it, facilitated it, profited from it. Some may be frightened by it, others are proud of it, and many hope it will continue. Second, PRC military spending has also increased significantly, although I am not confident that we have an accurate accounting of it. But even taking China's own probably understated figures, military spending on military modernization has gone from less than $20 billion in 1981 to over $129 billion in 2011. And it increased again in 2014, by about 12%, according to the National People's Congress budget released in March. Again, these numbers are somewhat notional, but they give you an idea of the scale of the growth that has gone on. The spending has significantly increased the size of the PRC Navy and has brought about qualitative improvements in the numbers of ships and naval weapons and their capabilities. The same can be said for the PRC's Air Force, its missile forces, its aerospace and cyber electronic capabilities. All have grown significantly. Again, no one is more aware of these changes than the people on Taiwan, although there are lively disagreements about what they mean and how to respond to them. And these kinds of disagreements are also present in the United States, in Japan, and elsewhere in the Asia-Pacific region. Third, The PRC's quote-unquote diplomatic activities in this region over the past 2 or 3 years have raised concerns that it is pursuing an increasingly aggressive, or at least insensitive, foreign policy, particularly when it comes to the issue of territorial disputes, such as the Senkaku Diaoyutai Islands and various reefs and atolls in the South China Sea, to say nothing of Taiwan. And again, Taiwan is deeply involved in these issues, as it has its own territorial claims in the South China Sea, and research done by the Republic of China many years ago is often used to substantiate some PRC claims to the islands in the region. So, big gorilla. But it has some formidable problems of its own that might make it seem not quite so threatening as others would like it to appear. First, its economic growth is slowing, and more attention is being paid by the PRC government to internal problems, such as environmental degradation, sectoral and socio-political imbalances, massive corruption within the Communist Party and the armed forces, ethnic unrest in many areas, and others. Diplomatically, its military actions have created resentments and a backlash in Southeast Asia and Japan, along with entreaties and enticements to an even bigger gorilla, the United States, to spend a little bit more time in the region. Last but not least is the problem of Hong Kong, something to do with umbrellas against gorillas. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But democratic aspirations there among very sophisticated and determined students mirror those at Tiananmen 25 years ago, but a similar conclusion to that struggle does not seem to be available to Beijing. The troops will be much more difficult to move. Mr. Keegan will talk more in a while about how the United States looks at PRC-Taiwan relations. And I would just say at this point, and he may choose to differ with me, that the carefully constructed strategic and political balances that enabled the United States and China to establish formal diplomatic relations 35 years ago still incline many Americans toward maintaining the status quo. Now, that's not always satisfactory to politicians in Taiwan, to people in Taiwan. And some may make efforts to sway American political opinion toward supporting change in the relationship. Changes of names, changes of institutions, defensive deployments, levels of cooperation, etc. And I'm using very vague terms, as you can understand. I offer no judgments about these efforts. I have seen many similar efforts before. They are not new, and it is not my place to make recommendations about how they should be pursued. I can understand the feelings of frustration and unfairness that people in Taiwan have felt for a long time. I certainly understand the unwillingness to be drawn into a closer relationship with a one-party dictatorship in Beijing. And I understand how the democratic process is alive and well in Taiwan, doing very well, thank you very much, although sometimes it appears to be nearly as messy as it is in the United States, as we just proved this past week. The People's Republic of China is very firm and unyielding in its position on Taiwan-related issues, deaf to arguments that a softer, less militant stance might pay benefits over time. The Hong Kong issue is unlikely to make Beijing more flexible, even though logic suggests that the one country, two systems approach is not working out quite the way that Deng Xiaoping expected it to, and others continue to intend. Beijing, in short, does not like change that it cannot control. I would anticipate, therefore, that as electoral politics develop in Taiwan, the PRC's attitude and statements may change. They may get tougher, they may get more threatening, as they have before. And to answer my own metaphorical question, China is not a gorilla, 800-pound or otherwise. It is a large, powerful, and complex nation, run by a corrupt and brittle political party that is not particularly skilled at handling simultaneous challenges or crises, and therefore is resistant to any changes in its version of the status quo. As domestic support within China for its empty ideology has declined, Beijing has made use of hard-edged nationalism to win support from the Chinese public. That kind of nationalism will no doubt make itself felt in the coming year, perhaps in a shrill and angry tone directed at one or both political parties on Taiwan, and certainly at the United States. The old National Security Council official in me says that a calm and measured response, both in Taipei and in Washington, would appear to be a prudent course. The other part of me says, keep your minds clear and your hearts strong. The future looks good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob, for your insights and for your dose of realism. And that's certainly going to be taken into account in the considerations. Our second speaker, David Kagan, is equally qualified to speak about Taiwan issues. He's been around for a long time, like all of us, of course. When I went to the State Department in the mid-90s to talk about Taiwan issues, David was there already, and he was the director of the Taiwan Coordination Office in the State Department. He subsequently also served as the deputy director of the American Institute in Taipei during the early Chen Shui-bian administration. So he's very familiar with Taiwan issues. He retired from the Foreign Service in 2012 and is now the course chair for Intensive China Area Studies at the State Department's Foreign Service Institute. So picking up on something that Bob just mentioned, if we want to change US policy towards Taiwan, we actually want to talk to David because he is really training the whole future generation of diplomats. So David will speak on US-Taiwan relations 35 years after the Taiwan Relations Act. Where do we go from here? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome David Kagan.